I'm going to sit here like an investigative reporter with my iPhone.
Wait a second. Whoops. LinkedIn says you're not approved for LinkedIn Live. It's only available for a limited group of members. Yada, yada, yada.
What's down? Abort!
Now, we'll just have to... so we'll remove that one. And then we'll do it to the other 7 locations. Okay.
It does say we're live on something, so I don't know what that is. RedTube.
Live on X-Ham stuff.
We are live across a number of different media. I didn't actually think we'd be able to do that.
Lovely. Look at that. Look at that. Perfect. Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is a special live edition of the Kerfuffle podcast. We're going to try and commentate along to Boris Johnson's address to the nation that is due to start in 5 minutes. This is the Kerfuffle World Service. We're joined here by PR expert, Mr. Jerry Lyons of the Estate Agent Content Club and the property PR expert. Mr. Lyons, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on this momentous evening we're about to share with the nation.
We are joined as ever by my co-host, Mr. Simon Whale.
Hello. Are we commentating or commandeering?
We're going to do a little bit of both. We obviously need to let Mr. Johnson have his say. But in terms of what we're all expecting tonight, he is not able to keep a secret. And it seems to be the modus operandi of the government at the moment is to release sort of tweets ahead of the address, which sort of give the game away. My worry, Jerry, and I would like your take on it, is that we're going to get a bit of an insipid, sort of very weak, rough guidelines, a little bit like we did before we were put into formal lockdown. So no real clarity or strength in his direction to people.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to have some meat on the bones of whatever they're going to say. It appears that this new slogan, "Stay alert," I've forgotten the middle bit, so it can't be that good. It can save lives. What's the middle bit of it?
It was a new slogan.
It was already changed, though, wasn't it? Haven't they already changed it from "Stay alert"?
It was "Stay in bed." Stay in bed, get rid of Zoom, and let's all just get back to living our lives like we used to.
I tell you, we should probably do it in order, because actually, we should obviously things we should be looking out for. The thing he's got to satisfy, isn't it, was their own 5 tests. So the first one was evidence that the NHS can cope across the UK. I think that's going to get a tick, isn't it? Because they've got those like the Nightingale hospitals, and it's seemingly coping anyway. Number 2 is you've got a sustained fall in daily death rates. Well, I suppose that's up for conjecture, because what do you do about care homes? Because that tends to rocket it. But the actual death rate's falling, isn't it? So do we all agree that's coming down?
I think, see, that's the problem. We don't know whether they're actually going at this a little bit too early. So the new slogan, by the way, is "Stay alert, control the virus, and save lives." Now, however you say these slogans, they come out sounding like a Dalek. But the issue I've got, Simon, and more local to us in Manchester, was the news recently that Salford has got the highest death rate outside of the city of London at the moment. And there's no signs that is receding right now. So, whilst there's new cases being declared every day and we've still got deaths in the hundreds, why would we want to change anything?
Well, what I'm taking from that, David, is that's the Northern Powerhouse right there. There is no north-south divide, Jerry. Stick that up your...
Yeah.
The North on its own.
It could be along the lines of why they said America got hit so hard, because a lot of Americans have underlying health conditions like obesity and that sort of stuff.
I see what you're doing there.
There might be some societal issues. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Right. Too much Toblerone.
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry. So we've got that one. And then underneath that, we've got obviously the evidence that the rate of infection is decreasing. And that's where it gets fairly scientific, isn't it? And you start dealing with that. Is it the R rate, the rate of infection? And that is below 1 as far as we can tell now. Did you hear about this kind of doubling up thing that they definitely put out there and have already abandoned, where they were going to allow you to essentially do the social distancing but double up with your neighbours? Apparently they said, didn't they, that the reason they abandoned that was because it would have pushed it up to the rate of reinfection being above 1 again, which is what, of course, they're trying to avoid at all costs.
Yeah. Was this it was muted about them? You can pick like 5 people or something to hang around with, or was that it? Is that what you're talking about? There's been a lot of confused messages.
You need to pick the 5 people you like the least. So, you know, your mother-in-law, maybe, I don't know. Mine's an angel. She loves me and I love her back. So.
The broadcast is on mine. I can see him coming up now.
Oh, is he? I can't see that.
Yeah, Channel 4's ahead of your feed, you see. Are you still on dial-up?
I'm on BBC.
Yeah, you see, they've not been given the right feed, have they?
I pay my license fees for a reason.
He's talking about hardships at the moment.
A rather posh gentleman is talking live on the on here. Let's see what we're doing.
It is now almost 2 months since the people of this country began to put up with restrictions on their freedom.
Of a kind that we have never seen before. And you have shown the good sense to support those rules overwhelmingly. You've put up with all the hardships of that program of social distancing because you understand that as things stand, and as the experience of every other country has shown, it's the only way to defeat the coronavirus, the most vicious threat this country has faced in my lifetime. And though the death toll has been tragic and the suffering immense, and though we grieve for all those we have lost, it is a fact that by adopting those measures, we prevented this country from being engulfed by what could have been a catastrophe in which the reasonable worst case scenario was 500,000 fatalities. And it's thanks to your effort and sacrifice in stopping the spread of this disease that the death rate is coming down and hospital admissions are coming down. And thanks to you, we've protected our NHS and saved many thousands of lives. And so I know, you know, that it would be madness now to throw away that achievement by allowing a second spike. We must stay alert.
Strong start.
Continue to control the virus and save lives. And yet we must also recognize that this campaign against the virus has come at colossal cost to our way of life. We can see it all around us in the shuttered shops and abandoned businesses and darkened pubs and restaurants. And there are millions of people who are both fearful of this terrible disease and at the same time also fearful of what this long period of enforced inactivity will do to their livelihoods and their mental and physical well-being, to their futures and the futures of their children. So I want to provide tonight for you the shape of a plan to address both fears, both to be—
Interesting that this is recorded. Doesn't allow any option for questions.
Reopening society, a sense of the way ahead, and when and how and on what basis the decision to proceed. I'll be setting out more details in Parliament tomorrow and taking questions from the public in the evening. I've consulted across the political spectrum, across all 4 nations of the UK. And though different parts of the country are experiencing the pandemic at different rates, and though it's right to be flexible in our response, I believe that as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, there is a strong resolve to defeat this together. And today, a general consensus on what we could do. And I stress could, Because although we have a plan, it is a conditional plan. And since our priority is to protect the public and save lives, we cannot move forward unless we satisfy the 5 tests. We must protect our NHS. We must see sustained falls in the death rate. We must see sustained and considerable falls in the rate of infection. We must sort out our challenges in getting enough PPE to the people who need it. And yes, it's a global problem, but we must fix it. And last, we must make sure that any measures we take do not force the reproduction rate of the disease, the R, back up over 1, so that we have the kind of exponential growth we were facing a few weeks ago. And to chart our progress and to avoid going back to square one, we're establishing a new COVID alert system run by a new joint biosecurity center.
Ooh.
And that COVID alert level will be determined primarily by R and the number of coronavirus cases. And in turn, that COVID alert level will tell us how tough we have to be in our social distancing measures. The lower the level,
Is he suggesting we can switch it up and down?
the tougher and stricter we will have to be. There will be 5 alert levels. Level 1,
All right, here you go.
disease is no longer present in the UK, and level 5 is the most critical, the kind of situation we could have had if the NHS.
Tell us where we're now.
It's just like the terrorist one, isn't it?
We've been
Yeah.
before,
Front level.
and it's thanks to your sacrifice we're now in a position to begin to move in steps to level 3. And as we go, everyone will have a role to play in keeping the R down by staying alert and following the rules. And to keep pushing the number of infections down, there are 2 more things we must do. We must reverse rapidly the awful epidemics in care homes and in the NHS. And though the numbers are coming down sharply now, there is plainly much more to be done. And if we're to control this virus, then we must have a world-beating system for testing potential victims and for tracing their contacts, so that all told, we're testing literally hundreds of thousands of people every day.
But you're not.
We've made fast progress on testing, but there is so much more to do now, and we can. When this began, we hadn't seen this disease before, and we didn't fully understand its effects. With every day, we're getting more and more data. We're shining the light of science.
Some comments coming through.
And we will pick it up where it strikes, because our new system will be able in time to detect local flare-ups in your area, as well as giving us a national picture.
My favorite.
When I look at where we are tonight, we have the R below 1, between 0.5 and 0.9.
Something constructive.
Potentially only just below 1. And though we have made progress in satisfying at least some of the conditions I have given, we have by no means fulfilled all of them. And so, no, this is not the time simply to end the lockdown this week.
Good man.
We're taking the first careful steps to modify our measures. And the first step is a change of emphasis.
Jerry, any comment on his hairstyle?
This week,
It's looking all right. He's combed it.
that you should work from home if you can, and only go to work if you must.
What does that mean,
I
Boris?
need to stress that anyone who can't work from home, for instance, those in construction or manufacturing, should be actively encouraged to go to work, and we want it to be safe for you to get to work. So you should avoid public transport if at all possible, because we must and
Good luck
will
with that.
maintain social distancing. And
They're keeping the capacity of public transport down to 10% of the norm.
but you should go to work if you can't work from home. And to ensure you're safe at work, we've been working to establish new guidance for employers to make workplaces COVID secure. And when you do go to work, if possible, do so by car, or even better, by walking or bicycle. But just
Really?
like workplaces, public transport operators will also
Still got your penny farthing.
secure standards.
Reese Mogg has.
We want to encourage people to take more and even unlimited amounts of outdoor exercise. You can sit in the sun in your local park, you can drive to other destinations, you can even play sports, only with members of your own
Chances on a game.
must obey the rules on social distancing. And to enforce those rules, we will increase the fines for the small minority who break them. And so
I'd be interested to know how much fines have been issued across the UK.
we will be monitoring the R and the number of new infections and the progress we are making. And if we as a nation...
Do you reckon they get these graphics done on £5 per hour?
I love the way it's a linear curve, like you're just going to do that.
In step 2, at the earliest by June the 1st, after half term,
My birthday.
we may be in a position to begin the phased reopening of shops and to get primary pupils back into schools in stages, beginning with reception, year 1 and year 6.
Makes
Our
sense.
ambition is that secondary pupils facing exams next year will get at least some time with their teachers before the holidays. And we'll shortly be setting out detailed guidance on how to make it work in schools. And
Cheers for mothers all over the country.
And step 3, at the earliest by July, and subject to all these conditions and further scientific advice, if and only if the numbers support it, we will hope to reopen at least some of the hospitality industry and other public places, provided they're safe and enforce social distancing. Throughout this period of the next 2 months, we will be driven not by mere hope or economic necessity. We're going to be driven by the science, the data, and public health. And I must stress again that all of this is conditional. It all depends on a series of big ifs. It depends on all of us, the entire country, to follow the advice, to observe social distancing, and to keep that R down. And to prevent reinfection from abroad, I'm serving notice that it will soon be the time, with transmission significantly lower, to impose quarantine on people coming into this country by air. And it's because of your efforts to get the R down and the number of infections down here that this measure will now be effective.
Too little, too late, Boris.
We'll be monitoring...
Should have happened months ago.
Should have kept me in Australia.
And nationally. If there are outbreaks, if there are problems, we will not hesitate to put on the brakes. We've been through the initial peak, but it's coming down the mountain.
Oh,
Often more dangerous.
coming down.
And we have a plan. And everyone in government has the all-consuming pressure and challenge to save lives, restore livelihoods, and gradually restore the freedoms that we need. But in the end, this is a plan that everyone must make work. And when I look at what you've done already, patience and common sense you've shown, the fortitude of the elderly, whose isolation we all want to end as fast as we can, the incredible bravery and hard work of our NHS staff, our care workers, the devotion and self-sacrifice
Christian Barfield.
in every walk of life who are helping us to beat this disease: police, bus drivers, train drivers, road hauliers, bin collectors, cleaners, security guards.
I like Christian a lot.
Right.
And 1,000 more. The scientists who are working round the clock to find a vaccine. The men with everyday acts of kindness and thoughtfulness across this country.
I love our viewers.
Help to get us through this first phase. I know that we can use this plan to get us through the next. And if we can't do it by
Is
this
anyone remotely clear
level, won't
where this leaves the property industry?
go on?
Not at all. That'll come out in the detail, though, won't it? Well, you hope.
Devilish illness.
Is there a new housing minister yet?
And that the UK will be changed by this experience. I believe we can be stronger and better than ever before, more resilient, more innovative, more economically dynamic, but also more generous and more sharing. But for now,
not with toilet rolls, though. Not with toilet rolls.
I think this comment sums it up.
Thank you very much.
Sharon.
What is Sharon today? I'm really sorry, I missed this. Stay alert, control the same.
Stay alert.
Okay, let's shut him down, or shut down the fake media, shall we, David?
Well, they've gone.
What do you make of that?
So,
who wants to go first?
I can't hear you. Just 1 second, please. I'm back on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
you. Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Who's going first?
Well, I think we should hear from our guest, Mr. Lyons. Enlighten us. What does Mr. Johnson mean?
I mean, there's obviously the three steps. That was something we had a bit of. Well, he confirmed there's going to be 3 phases, but it's so vague.
No,
but I understand. I get the fact that in a 15-minute broadcast, there's only so much he can say. So he has to get the key points across. I get that.
But look at what Christian's got to say on that point.
That is a point, isn't it? Look, why did he only do 15 minutes? This strikes me as pretty much like hiding in the fridge territory, really. You know, he's not done it live. He's given the most basic detail there. Platitudes left, you know, the bit about what did he say there? This isn't a case of just hoping again, or so it appears, you know, driven not by hope. Well, at least he's learning, because to be fair, the whole Brexit campaign was about just believe. But there was still not much in there, was there?
No, there wasn't much content in there at all. I mean, I saw the graphs and I was listening to the words, and there weren't any real timelines in there, Jerry. There was 3 stages, but that was it.
Well, you got the timelines here. I missed the first one about sorry, that's tomorrow. The builders and factory workers can get to work. Now, what if you're a builder working in central London? You could be working from northwest London to southeast London. It's a hell of a trek. You're going to need public transport. And what if you haven't got I thought it was a little bit unrealistic, some of the stuff he was coming out.
Some great comments coming in here. So Chris Perkins, 15 minutes is because the majority of the population is stupid. They cannot listen for any longer.
Chris could be right.
Chris is talking about all the Brexit voters there. And we've got Sharon. Sharon, I think you're flip-flopping, but it's Sharon's earlier comments probably more pertinent.
Can I just read that out, actually? Because I do think, Sharon, for me so far, and there's some corkers coming in, but as she highlighted, just as it was written, and I don't think we can do much better, this is as I feared, and is going to be so blooming messy. We won't know what to do to be right, but also get on with business. Total mare. Well,
is there a possibility that Jenrick or whoever the housing minister is this week will come out and firm each individual minister for their different portfolio?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? You'd think
that would make logical sense, that the culture minister comes out and says what's happening with the football and the sport. The housing minister comes out and says what's happening in our industry, blah, blah, blah. Education minister, etc. They've all got their own portfolios.
But surely that's what's going to filter out, isn't it, over the next week? And this is exactly what happened at the beginning when there were no clear guidelines broken down per industry. We eventually got some guidance for the property industry, but it felt like it had been fumbled and it had been a very last minute consultation.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they've learned from that experience.
Do you think this is again a bit of the you know, not obviously I'm hugely suspicious and critical, but do you think this is about trying to keep Boris, you know, pigeonholed with the good news and letting other people deliver all the shit sandwiches?
Yeah, there could be that, definitely, because they rely on the government is a bit of a cult of Boris at the moment. You'd know if you were unpopular within the government if they said, right, it's your turn. What have I got? Where the death rates rise, the R rate is down here, the C rates, you know what I mean?
Where's Priti Patel? Priti? Come here.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody subscribes to Sharon Carter's theory.
It's a cover up for it. No, I don't, because it'll be a global.
I agree with that.
Sharon, they can't run a piss up in a brewery. You know, they famously couldn't buy the minister didn't know Dover was a port. They are not doing a global cover up.
Chris Birkin seems to agree with you as well.
Yeah, you know what I do find interesting amongst all this is, it's like in business, we look at businesses that are successful to model ourselves on. Why don't we look at who's it, like New Zealand, South Korea, all these countries that have got to grips, or countries that have got to grips with it? Yeah. I know there's differentials like population size and all that sort of stuff. Can't we look towards these countries and think, what are they doing right? Is there anything of that we can transport into us?
Isn't that, I mean, again, I'm a simplistic man, Jerry, as you know from our previous conversations. But, you know, the simple point about all of those is they have tested and tested again from the very, very earliest phase, isn't it? And, you know, we talk about and pontificate on our normal estate agency podcasts about the importance of KPIs, and if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if you believe in that basic premise, that isn't a way to monitor a pandemic, isn't it? Putting your finger in the air and go, it feels like, I love what they did there, by the way, and we kind of mentioned it. They've just nicked the terrorist, that terrorist one's got a bit tired recently. So someone said, have you still got the terrorist graphs? Can you bring them out? They're going to be absolutely fucked. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but imagine if there's a terrorist attack and they've got the pandemic going on, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
So it all goes. See, the problem with all of these stages is, and using that. Did you see that little infographic with the finger on it that went from sort of green good to red bad? To do that in each increment, hundreds of people, if not thousands, have to lose their lives in order to justify going back indoors again. How much of, I mean, I am not the Prime Minister, but that to me does not seem like a justifiable price to pay.
I mean, you've got to think of the impact. Remember, people are still getting illnesses that are not COVID-19 related. People are still being diagnosed with cancer and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So I get why it just needs to be so.
Yeah. Jerry, can we touch on that one? Because that one really jumped out at me there. Yeah, you know, he was talking about this. And he made the point a number of times about overwhelming the NHS. We cannot allow the NHS to be overwhelmed. But I was reading the Times this morning, and the Times made the point that since they obviously had to pretty much abandon all normal operations and therapy, there's now an extra 1.3 million patients have been added to waiting lists to see a specialist for conditions ranging from heart problems through to cancer. Adding to, and this is why again. You can't just say you can let them off or who expects a pandemic. It was already a record backlog of 4.4 million people in February. And they reckon by the time that this goes on, it could be 7.2 million by the end of September. Now, not all of those are fatal conditions, but a good proportion of them are. And it's this classic thing, isn't it? At what point does this trying to manage this beast over here lead to actually all these other, more boring things, killing more of us, and actually for the cost of crippling your economy as well?
Big questions you're asking there. Big massive questions. I mean,
but I think if you look at this, the one thing that leads to this sort of wishy-washy complacency is the fact that we have not hit a worst-case scenario. Let me ask you. Do we need to hit a worst-case scenario for us to honestly take this more seriously? So the fact that those emergency hospitals that they built, the Nightingale hospitals, are not full to brimming, we should all give each other a big, pat on the back and say, congratulations, guys, we are flattening this curve. But we should not be saying, we should not use that as the justification for going back to where we were before and then risking a second peak. My thoughts.
Right. I think with that Nightingale example, that was a good example of, like damned if they do and damned if they don't.
Absolutely.
Everyone would, the anti-Boris, and I'm not left-wing, right-wing, whatever. It doesn't interest me. But if it was full, the Tories are fucked up.
Yeah.
If it's empty, he's fucked up again, sort of thing. It's a bit like the England football manager. You know, they can never get it right for getting it wrong.
Some great comments here.
So they always fuck it up as well.
So
they always fuck it up as well. Just on that point, by the way, guys, do we? You know, I probably have to apologise for my demographic, the youth of today, because I was again, you know. The youth have really just completely said we're not interested in this anymore, have they? You know, if you see those pictures, look, it's not just them, but overwhelmingly, because they, it's hardly impacted on them really, even when they've caught it. And I was reading again today, almost half of those aged 18 to 29 admitted having broken the rules. And that was a survey of 85,000. So that is not, that is well beyond statistical relevance. And again, there has never been, has there, like a generation gap with this issue, both in terms of how it's perceived and the actual effects on people.
I think somebody summed it up. I read somewhere, they said, we're not all in the same boat, but we're in the same storm. And I think it's a lot easier for people who've got gardens to turn around and say, you lot shouldn't be going out twice a day. If you're in the tower block in Clapham, the temptation to go all Salford or wherever, Moss Side or wherever, there is going to be that temptation. And I know people should stay indoors. But I think with this relaxation, what it looks like, this phase one, people can go out and exercise as many times as a day as they like. So I'll be interested to see what the sort of his the government press briefings over the next few days are going to be. That's where we should be getting all this detail. A bit of a cop out that he didn't have reporters asking him questions there. That would have been useful, I think. But we'll see. We'll see.
But did you ever think you would see a Prime Minister of the UK using the song lyrics to "She'll be coming down the mountain when she comes" as a way to describe the worst pandemic we've ever seen?
His speechwriter has said to one of their mates, "Give me a song title to get in." Like when the footballers are getting in.
Can you imagine if he'd started doing the things from coming down the mountain?
In the background, like you had General Patel doing it like that.
A green screen with Thomas the Tank Engine.
All right, so let me ask you a question, and this is open to anybody that's watching us as well. You can the comments are coming in thick and fast, and I think we all echo Stephen Brown's sentiments. Health before wealth, too much fluff and uncertainty. But let me ask you: you are an estate agency owner. Yeah, I know I am. So I have to answer these questions. What does this mean for me today, and what am I doing at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning?
Spot on.
And the answer to that, so I ask you that question as somebody that has a gift shop, a cake shop, whatever it is, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, whoever it is, has these questions right now, not just within our industry. And where are we going to go with it, and what guidance, and how long do we as an industry now need to wait for that guidance to come through? And supplemental question, how many of these idiots are we going to read about in the industry press that now take this wishy-washiness as license to open their practices again and just keep 2 meters apart?
So, David, that was always my concern, is if it wasn't explicitly clear, and for all my criticism about Brexit, the one thing that they communicated was some really simple, Jerry, you've spoke about it as well, haven't you? The importance of having a really simple slogan, things to aim for. And this is just all over the place. And again, people are going to just take advantage. My concern has always been, without those really simplistic, straight orders, that, the idea of a phased release was fanciful. We're already seeing people just saying sod off. The idiots are all going to be out, but I actually start thinking, once the idiots are out, then you've got more reasonable people saying, well, hang on a minute, if they're doing it, why aren't we?
Yeah. I think that the slogan thing is really interesting, because it makes their sloganing before, their messaging before has been really tight. And this one is what? Stay alert, control. Is it control? the virus. How the fuck do you control the virus?
They're doing a great job of controlling the virus so far. I mean,
surely this is surely not beyond the wit of these people that are very sort of, especially very educated, to have just a list, a few lists. If you're in category A, you can't go back yet. If you're in category B, you can go back. Category C, you'll have to wait. Surely there's not a finite, infinite amount of businesses around the country, types of businesses. Yeah. There's got to be, I don't know, even if there was 1,000, a list of 1,000 businesses saying, estate agents, you know what, guys, you can't come back until.
So just to clarify, Jerry, because obviously that's what you would have done in that position there. It would have been that, let's face it, the pensioners, because of its drastic effect, until the vaccine comes along, we can try and make out platitudes, but you haven't got a solution unless you're willing to risk your life realistically, have we? You need the vaccine or at least treatments before you're let out. Everyone else, though, the odds shift, and so does the decision making, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's
unprecedented.
I don't know if it's unprecedented or challenging or whatever. I mean, we need clear. You know what? We've got to be a bit more like China. I know that sounds a bit mental, no, but just to go and China. I've been to South Korea. I've been to China. No, sorry, I haven't been to China. I've been to Japan, and I can see why South Korea could arrest their problem, even though apparently they've had a slight second wave coming back. It's been reported in the last 48 hours, but they're almost slightly more compliant is probably the wrong word. But over here, all it needs is a little bit of wiggle room for somebody to go, oh no, but he didn't say that, did he?
Yeah, but considering that we were at the beginning of this a month behind Italy, and we were always told we were a month behind Italy.
And how bad Italy was.
And how bad it was. We now have been told that we have won the accolade for surpassing all the European figures. And I know that there are a lot of debate at the moment as to whether or not those statistics are correct. But let's just say we have the highest death toll in Europe. Why risk it again? This is exactly where we were. If Italy have just gone back, what was it, about a week ago? Why are we rushing to get back if they've had a month on us?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. And do you feel that? I mean, I saw Simon. I think I sent it to you. There was this poster, wasn't there, where the UK Freedom Movement are arranging a mass protest in Hyde Park on the 16th, which is mad. It's madness.
These Boris idiots. Sorry, these Trump-style morons.
Correct. But we always used to say, look, okay, ignore Trump. Whatever he does doesn't affect us. But let's face it, what's happening in the States is filtering across over here. This pressure isn't necessarily homegrown, is it?
It's pretty unbelievable when you see those demonstrations over in the States. And so
militias is just unbelievable. It's just, I mean, it's what are they willing to tolerate from the right wing over there? It's incredible. But then it's been normalised by Trump, hasn't it? So why would you not?
And but Boris did sort of say, about they're going to rely on science and data, which prop tech guys should get their head around that. About all this talk of data, they can understand it more.
Jerry, have you seen? Look, there's my idea of data. That's me counting to get out, and I think I've got to keep counting. So I don't know if that assertion's right.
I thought that was in Shawshank Redemption on the wall.
It's the last time I had a Greg's.
We've been joined by property royalty. Mr. Sanjay Gandhi is in the house.
Somebody who suffered famously from the illness as well. So.
I don't know if Sanjay's still listening to this, but as somebody who's suffered it, are you keen to get back in, or do you know firsthand how this is and think we should keep back?
Sorry, we've spoke about that on the podcast before, David, haven't we? That's a really interesting demographic, is the fact that, when they first started off, people who get infected, and it's a horrible thing about society that we see them as dirty. But actually, as that becomes a sizable number, hundreds of thousands and millions, they're all saying, hang on a minute, what the fuck are you stopping me from getting back to you? I can be part of the solution. Let me. And it's almost like then you need to start having
the answer to your question is, the answer to your question is three things: testing, testing, and testing. And because we haven't got capacity with testing, because we haven't done the number of tests that are possible on the people that we know are suffering with it right now, how on earth are we going to monitor the people that think they've had it, might be immune to it? Is there enough statistical data or scientific data that says you cannot get it a second time? So Sanjay, who is listening, Sanjay might feel safe now, and he may say, look, I'm going out to work, I've already had it, I'm immune. But we know that this thing is mutating all the time. Now, having had it once, Sanjay, would you risk having it again?
I thought you were going to ask him to go out and see if he could get it again, which is asking too much, even for the Kerfuffle podcast. Don't do it, Sanj.
Don't. Stay at home, Sanj, please, please. But these are questions. Look, these are really legitimate questions that people all around the country should be happening. If you were right now a NHS worker, some sort of key worker, so you could be a carer, you could be a social worker, you could be the Tesco's delivery guy, whoever it is that is now serving our country on the front line, what has the PM's address said to them?
One thing that I did find really, really bizarre was he said in phase 3, was it, about the restaurants, but they've got to practice social distancing. Now, you know what restaurants are like. It's all about getting as many tables in as possible, so you feed as many people as possible. I just can't understand how that can work. It's just some of this stuff really just baffles me.
Jerry, most of these businesses weren't making money when they could stuff people in, is it? The transport system was, famously knackered. It's like, there aren't many businesses out there that were sitting on massive margins. So it's like, I'm just having a look here, guys, by the way, at what's trending interestingly on Twitter. Unsurprisingly, I mean, Boris Johnson is trending number 1, but Boris has failed, has come in very strongly at number 2 with 55,000. Pre-recorded is in the top 10 as well on there. You've got PowerPoint for the graphs, I assume there. Cheers, Boris is down at number 14. So I can't see too many people feeling like it's too happy at the moment with them.
You know what though? From a PR perspective, Boris Johnson is almost falling into that Trump category where he can do no wrong with his supporters.
That's right. 30% stay great no matter what.
Yeah, with his tribe, as it were. I think he's got to be careful with this middle ground of people, which are like swing voters or whatever you want to call them, where they're a bit more questioning. They're not going to follow it blindly, every word he said.
Does he have to be careful? I mean, unless they break the fixed term promise again, he's got another, 4 and a bit years to go. So, okay, he wants as much, and he's clearly a populist. He clearly wants to be liked. But I'll tell you where it does make sense, though. If they think they're going to get out of this with the public support where it is and then roll us straight into Brexit without having thought this through, I just can't see how that can happen.
Just have a look at Sanjay's comment there. I think you can probably see it up on the screen. Now, look, that's
you're going to read it out, Dave, just for the people?
Yeah, I will do. Sanjay said, I believe sooner or later we will have to go back to work, and it's a very subjective decision. So I will be definitely not inviting any clients to the office, and I have a small team working from home, but we will get back to the office in the next week or so, with social distancing being key in the office, and the rest of my team will still remain furloughed. So, that's very decisive from Sanjay, and he's right. After a bit, we're all going to have to make a financial decision.
Yeah.
Do we want businesses to come back to? Have we still got something we can come back to? There are sales that have been held in limbo for too long. There are people that still need to move house due to natural life cycle events. And I would argue that those are now exacerbated. And one of the key life cycle events that we come across are either babies or divorces. And there's going to be a lot of both after this.
Yeah, And I mean, going back earlier, I wasn't quite as strong with, look, on the face of it, Stephen's comment about health over wealth is clearly, but there is that point that, at what point does that start to fall away? Because it's not that there aren't health connotations now. We've spoken about those waiting lists. Once those waiting lists start killing people and all the stories can't coming out because they didn't manage to get a trolley, a gurney, or whatever else there because someone with corona was sat on it, it's very different. So I just think there's got to be, there's got to be due balance. There's everything in life has, as an economist, has that opportunity cost. If you do one thing, you can't do another thing ordinarily, isn't it? And that's what we're taking a decision. And what I don't think we've got the statistics, and this comes back down to the testing and everything else, is where are we being put? Where is the minister talking about very honestly that there are all these, waiting lists, and actually projected from that there's going to be 50,000 people to die. What will that do in terms of changing the persona and the national conversation we're having?
Do you want to? I'm going to pass on to you, David, on that one.
Well, I'm going to say no, Simon. All of your comments are bang on, and again, any of these questions we can leave lingering in the air for now, because the answer to it is we've not been given an answer, and it doesn't matter what you think, and it doesn't matter what I think. It's what he says, and if he does not say it decisively enough, we will not have a decision. Now, right. What is very interesting and affecting the industry are these next three comments I'm going to read out now. Jeff Quantrell hits the nail on the head. He says, "Hi guys, surely the challenge isn't so much getting back into the office. It's all about carrying viewings and valuations on occupied stock." So we all know, roughly speaking, and again, I'll go to our friend Oliver James. His big decision is now empty houses, sitting in a car and letting someone else have a look around by themselves. Are we confident enough to do that? So these two questions taken together give you the anxieties of an average agent. It's, are we okay to do viewings on empty stock? That's fine. Yeah. Empty stock, however, only forms probably a overwhelming minimal proportion of all the instructions on the market.
You know what's going to happen there, Dave? People are just going to start pretending it's empty stock, aren't they? You're going to start seeing the bullshit. Oh, well, there'd been no one there for what period of time, they'd moved out, and that's how they'll try to justify. I saw on Twitter earlier, did you catch it? The PB1 who was picking up, I think somebody was talking about purple bricks, and they were showing a Trustpilot.
Yeah.
Did you see it? And it was raging, and it was quite rightly, people were pointing out, well, you're feeling smug about having done this, having done this drive-by viewings and everything else there. It's
well, it should come as no surprise that people that instruct Purple Bricks as their agent are probably Trump supporters. It's just the way that it is. No, I'm kidding. Those people were actually sort of claiming their right, weren't they, to show the property in the way that they thought.
No, they said feeling smug or something, didn't they?
Yeah, they were feeling smug because they feel that they've taken decisive steps to actually push forward. Some more comments coming in, and they're all pretty good. So we're going to just try and get through them as much as possible. Napoleon Wilcox, buyers will be pushing from viewings for the week ahead. He's right. So people that have listened to this and don't know what or have interpreted it their way, they're going to be pushing. Sanjay Gandhi, I also believe that we are going to have a problem with the cost of furloughing.
That is really... So that one, by the way, I would have thought that would have been top of the announcement, what's happening with furloughing. I'd really imagine from a common strategy,
Rishi Sunak will be dealing with something like that. Like I said, Nick will be dealing with the House because they all get different briefs. So it's massive organisation. Obviously, Boris Johnson's a figurehead, and then it splits off into all these other communication pots.
And to be honest, he's the only one with any sort of goodwill balance, if you like. They'll probably all be saying, "We've delivered all these shit sandwiches now. Come on, you've got to come out and actually deliver some of the bad news as well, haven't you? Because it can't go forever."
Well, he's gonna have to stop giving the money away at some point, and that's when he's going to turn into the tide will turn. The PR tide will turn on him slightly.
We're getting some more comments coming in, guys.
Okay.
You've got Jeff Quantrell again. Plenty of sales inquiries already. People want to view. By the way, I'm not opening my doors yet. Skeleton staff on the 18th, social distancing in the office. Looking to get my staff back fully on the 1st of June. Sanjay's come back on. David, pipeline management is most crucial issue for some businesses rather than viewings, etc. at the moment. There are a lot of people held in limbo at the moment who don't know whether they're moving or not.
Can I ask a question just to the people watching and listening, and you guys as well? How many of your agencies have got clean protocols in place or a way of working now? You know, so to make sure that your staff are safe, your clients are safe, your community is safe. Is there a because I know a couple of people have. I know Jane Early over in Southampton. She's worked on a protocol of what we're going to do.
I saw that earlier.
Yeah, and she's going to set it out. And we're talking about wishy-washiness, but sometimes the agent's got to look at what they're doing. Or business.
Look at that comment there. Sorry, guys, that's the one. Look at that. Sharon, I actually got called a cunt by an applicant last week because I told him I couldn't allow a physical viewing on an empty house. I pointed out to him that he should look in the mirror. Well, that's the great British public there, isn't it? Yeah. You know, really, we can cope with this. And he was. I'll give him his dues. He was quite balanced in not pointing the finger back at the British public. You know, but all the way they are layering obviously this on, aren't they? Time and time again. It's up to you how long this lasts, how deep it goes, and everything else there.
But let me ask you something now. If you're George, how old is he? He's 10, right? 9 or 10?
9.
So 9-year-old kid. Let's assume the rest of the UK are all 9-year-old kids. Yep. You tell George he has to get in bed for 8 o'clock because you're a responsible parent. He's got school the next morning. You know what's going to happen if he stays up till 12.
Yeah.
Do you say, George, you're a big enough man, work this out yourself? Or do you say, no, get in that fucking bed because in the morning we're going to have murders? And for the most part, parenting is a little bit like leadership. But when you are leading the UK, and let us take Brexit as an absolute example, we are very much divided by our opinions, and we know that the 49% of us cannot rely on the rest of you to think rationally. So they need dictating to a certain extent. So I feel that we need to see Boris step forward and say, this is the line.
Are you wishing a dictatorship on us? It sounds
David is suggesting we get a benevolent dictator to run the
country. What I'm suggesting is that you need strong leadership in order to save lives. Now, whatever you think about Germany, not in the 1940s, now, right, today, but, you know, or even let's go to China, let's go to Korea. The reason why the levels were kept to the level that they were is because people do as they're told. But over here, we've had a bit of sunshine, so we feel that it's okay to treat this like an extended bank holiday.
The virus can't get you when it's sunny.
But it is counterintuitive. If we were in the depth of winter, nobody. If this was December the 12th, no one would be clamoring to get back to work right now.
Here's another aspect to this. There's not enough law enforcement. There's not enough police to enforce any sort of PCSOs, those sort of thing. A PCSO comes up to someone, they go, all right, mate, go on, piss up, sort of thing. But so it's just that you can't imagine a worse thing dropping on a country that's not prepared. And it seems like the whole world was not prepared, because I think we were all putting money in the wrong places, nations.
Yeah.
It seems like the Ministry of Defence, really, we needed the Ministry of Virus Protection, or what's that thing they've got, the CDC in America.
They Jerry, famously, didn't they? They had that, and one of the first things he did, Trump, he came in again and he slashed those bills, as they always do. But, you know, as a chippy communist, champagne communist, you know, the reason we've been having a pop at, austerity for the last 10 years, it's not because, you know, with hindsight, we're able to say, oh, well, they didn't spot the pandemic. It's because the system was utterly maxed out with just the day-to-day stuff. So anything was going to be overwhelming. And as we're seeing now, and this is, by the way, it's not just the NHS. Look at the care homes disasters coming on. That's the first sign of weakness I've seen Boris admit.
He was very clear about that, wasn't he?
Sorry, we have made mistakes. Even PPE. He admitted PPE, but okay, he softened it with the fact that other nations are suffering as well. But, I don't think many others, have. First of all, we are the 5th or 6th richest nation in the world, and we knew about this at the earliest possible stage, as our scientists told us, and we still ballsed it up.
But the complacency seems to be a thing with a lot of the Western countries anyway.
Yeah.
They've been a bit more complacent. In the East, they seemed a little bit more proactive and think, right, this. But maybe that's because they had MERS and SARS experience.
Maybe. It's interesting. Oliver James says Boris is a people pleaser, and that's the problem. But I must tell you, I agree with Oliver. And we've just had VE Day, so we're all feeling extremely jingoistic. We're feeling like we can take on the world and win. Let us not make the mistake of comparing coronavirus, which is indiscriminate against what social class you're in, although we're seeing that there are the same black and ethnic minorities are disproportionately affected, and also the people that lower down the social scale are suffering, which should come as no surprise. But it doesn't care actually whether you are socially malnourished for whatever reason, or you're the Queen. It will come and it will attack you, it will take your life. But I think anybody that has here on the left wing compared Boris to Donald Trump should understand that he is not a Donald Trump character. What he's done today, he could have very easily stood up and said, okay, guys, look, I want to divide England and up into several boroughs, and you guys make the decision whether you come back. And by the way, I think you need to get people back into work. That's what Trump's done in the States. And that will cost a number of lives. And that is extremely, it's just irresponsible in the extreme. And Boris Johnson is not quite that, is he, Jerry?
No, I think, and there's a point that Simon was making about Boris Johnson. He admitted his mistakes, which I think is a good thing. If you fucked up, admit it. That's one thing we say about our politicians. They can't take responsibility. He has come out and said that he's made a couple of cock-ups. No, not cock-ups. Sorry. A couple of big mistakes the government have made, not just cock-ups. But comparing him to Trump, no, I don't think it's a...
Simon, let me ask you a question. It's hard for you to comment on this, but could you imagine a Britain led by Corbyn at this time?
I'll tell you what, it wouldn't have lasted, because the press, as what you spoke about Italy earlier, and regardless of Corbyn being competent or anything, they couldn't. I don't think they could have been truly less competent, that much less competent than it. But the papers wouldn't have allowed them to get anywhere near this. When we passed Italy's total the other day, they were talking about Boris's baby on the front pages. And that wasn't, by the way, one paper, two paper. That was the majority of our written press, which most of us get our news and our discussion points from. It's a real failure of democracy, actually.
This is such an interesting point you make about the press tomorrow, because the front pages are going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
The Sun, I wrote it down. I thought the Sun will come up with something like 3 steps to heaven. It's a nice, easy. The Sun has got an average reading age. We did this at journalist college. Probably still the same now. An 8-year-old could read the Sun from cover to cover, and it's made.
Heard that.
Need to be like that. So you'll have the Guardian. They'll be pulling out their side of it. You'll have the Mail. The Express will just be talking about the weather, wouldn't it? The Daily Express. The house price is going up.
10 gardening tips before you get back to work on Monday. That'll be.
No, it won't be. It will be Princess Diana, the unseen footage.
Yeah, this is another thing about the announcement just there. I thought, and my understanding was, gardening centres are definitely going to open. So this makes me think that tomorrow we're going to see a lot more detail. Yeah. So.
Do you not think,
by the way, garden centres?
taking a very cynical view at garden centres, they actually attack a particular demographic of people My grandparents frequented garden centres pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Is this just a way to wipe out the rest of our elderly population by opening those first? I mean, what's he playing with there?
It's an odd one, isn't it? You know, like of all the things to open, put on your list, because I think they've opened them in Wales. Because maybe like Scotland don't have to follow his lead, do they? Because they, what's her name?
No, well, famously, both Scotland and Wales have completely different slogans now.
Yeah,
They have different timelines. I think Scotland have extended the full lockdown to May the 28th, and they will review it. There was some harsh criticism from Scotland to the Conservative government as regards, their message and what they were going to announce today. Irritating, yes, it was pre-recorded. What irritates me more is that there was management of expectations going on pretty much from this morning. So there was all these leaks. There were government ministers that have sat on the BBC panels all day explaining the situation. So really, this came as no surprise.
That's all part of the communication strategy of any politician, political parties or organisations. Alistair Campbell famously briefed anyone and everyone that he was willing to trust before the Iraq war. So that's not really that surprising. I mean, it'd be interesting. I think tomorrow's press conference, whenever it is, will be more interesting than this one in many ways.
And I think we'll be seeing Rishi Sunak before the end of the week with some news on furlough. We're going to need to hear where we're going with this. Abigail Gray has very rightly wrapped me across the knuckles and said, "Do not be ageist. I love a garden centre." Abigail, you're right. They do a lovely cream tea on a Sunday afternoon. Make sure you put your teeth back in first.
That's the thing. The best thing about going to any garden centre is having that cream tea. You can't, because that part of the garden centre is not going to open to phase 3, which is in July.
Before we wrap up, because I'm conscious of time, because Jerry, you've got books to write before tomorrow. I just want to give a quick shout out to our friend Susanna Mavity, who over the weekend sent me possibly the best T-shirt I've ever seen. It doesn't quite fit and it accentuates my ample bosom, but I'll show it you anyway. Here we go. Carol did it.
Brilliant.
That is my lockdown story right there.
Now let's get our eyes back up here again, Dave. I was mesmerised.
Yeah, well.
They follow me around the room.
Sanjay Gandhi has said that he reckons that furlough will drop to 60, so 60% of people's salaries.
I think that's optimistic. I think it's going to drop more brutally than that.
Yeah, I did think of something about this. Remember when this all started off and the government was saying about they didn't want to enforce the lockdown really quickly, like pretty much straight away when it was all happening, because they said people were hitting a point of peak being locked upness, frustration, and that would have been about 2 or 3 weeks ago when the peak was like we were getting to the peak. So maybe they called that right. I want to try and be balanced, you know what I mean? So maybe that was the right call in those situations.
Well, Jerry, tonight it's Sunday, isn't it? We're going back to work tomorrow. We're gonna, all being well, and I hope that everybody does stay well, and I hope that the majority of you stay indoors this week unless you absolutely need to go out. But we'll have you back this time next week, and maybe let's have a look at what's happened during the course of the week, review those briefings, and see where it leaves the property industry, because right now,
no idea.
Have the answers.
No. And check out the different front covers tomorrow. That'd be an interesting.
Yeah, so they release them at about midnight, don't they, Jerry? You can normally have a look online, can't you?
BBC normally get them out about that time as well. So there's a guy on Twitter you can follow who does a thing where he goes, tomorrow's headlines today.
I think that it's Sharon again who's been our favourite tonight, clear as mud. Yeah. I don't know whether that's Boris or us, but we'll take it, meaning the government. Cheers, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Cheers, David.
Kerfuffle World Service signing out.
Bye-bye. Fake news.
See you soon.
See you later, lads. Right.
I'm trying to get out of this.
I'm stuck in.
Well, this is awkward, isn't it?
Yeah. But now Simon's gone. Let me fuck him off out of it.
See you soon.
See you later, mate.